And we are live.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Milestone Roundtable edition. Black Comic Lords is in the building. We are here. It's your boy Rich. I have my man Mike Carson. I have the Queen Tameko, our moderator, and I have the Chief Don Dada Paul with us on tonight. Before we get started, I want to just ask, how's everybody doing?
All is well.
Doing all right.
All right, good to hear. Good to hear. So, we've been doing these roundtables now for this is our third episode. Our previous roundtables we first started off static, and that was a dope roundtable. My man Mike Carson showed up, and it made everybody tuck their chain with them.
Showed up
all them
and showed out.
whatever. Yeah, and so that was good. And then last week we talked about hardware, which was a deep dive into a complicated man who was dealing with corporate America. So that was an amazing roundtable as well. But I don't think tonight's roundtable is probably going to be, if not the best, one of the best, because we're talking about Arnish, aka Paragon, aka Augustus Freeman, aka Icon. Now, some people say that Icon isn't black because he's an alien, but with that many AKAs, yeah, that's a brother. Sound like a brother to me. But anyway, tonight we are going to talk about his history in comics. We're going to talk about some iconic covers and some dope story arcs, his presence in the DCU, and of course the future. So to get us started real quick, when we think about Icon, the backstory of who he is an amazing story because it's kind of on parallel with Superman. But to just give you an idea of who his character is, Augustus Freeman, his first appearance is Icon #1. I've mentioned just recently that his original name or his origin name for the comic book is concerned was Paragon. Milestone was not able to keep Paragon due to another superhero in somewhere, and some obscure comic book company had a similar name or the same name. So Milestone wasn't able to use it. But this just to show you how far this goes back, Milestone was published in 1993, but they had incorporated Icon, or I should say Paragon, back as early as 1991. Some of the publications that come out, I know people always cite the Preview magazine as being the first appearance of Paragon or whatever, but I like to tell people that this is really where it all started. Because this is actually dated as November 1992, and but they had to settle on Icon. And just for anybody's thought or whatever, what does Paragon actually means? Paragon is actually is defined as a model of excellence or perfection, and they did actually use that word Paragon in issue #8 of Icon. So if anybody's ever looking for that, that's some free useless news for you. Anyway, let's look at his powers and abilities. This is a superhero that has superhuman strength. He has dope reflexes. Although he will sleep on you, he will get hit with the butt of a rifle when he's not prepared. Also, he has speed and stamina and agility. He can't fly, of course. He has enhanced senses, near invulnerability and durability. Yes, that can be debated. Ask the Blood Syndicate because he got mollywopped pretty good by Brick House. We'll talk about that later. Accelerated healing, of course, energy projection and position fields, hand-to-hand combat, law and meditation, and multilingual. Yes, Augustus Freeman was a well-rounded individual, and I guess if you were around over 150 years, you would be too. So let's move right along and talk about Rocket real quick. Slide, please. Well, here we go. Rocket, aka Raquel Irvin. The first appearance we know is Icon #1. Her powers and abilities stimulate from a belt that Icon gave her. The inertia belt that she wears grants her these abilities: purple aura, flight, superhuman strength, kinetic energy aura, kinetic energy generation control, kinetic force field generation. And in essence, what happens is when you try to fight her, her utility belt is able to store that energy that is opposed to her. She's able to store it and distribute it back to you. So if you hit her in the jaw, she's gonna break your face because she just got that much power in her belt. Her skills, we know that she has high intelligence. She's 15 years old in her first Origins setting, and she likes to ride. We know she does gymnastics very, very well, and she's good at hand combat. She does have hands, and she will smack you. You can ask Icon. She smacked Icon a couple of times. I didn't like it, but you know, you do what you got to do, I guess. So let's go back a couple of slides, or the last slide, and talk about a little bit about the origin. Mr. Paul, if you don't mind, could you kind of take us through some of this, sir?
Yeah, sure. Derek, can we go back to slide 4, please? All right, so let's take these one by one. His superhuman strength. Yeah, what's interesting, and we'll get more into his origins in a minute, but in essence, when this alien Arnis came to Earth, he was initially transformed into an African-American child, the baby. So he didn't really have his superpowers. He was cognitive as to what's going on. And he used that time as a baby. The logic behind making him a baby is the idea that most civilized societies take care of their young, don't try to harm their young. And the idea is that while he is a child, he can learn the language, learn the customs, get acclimated as the time goes by. But what you could tell from the stories is that he did not have all of his powers at once. He kind of developed them a little bit over time. So people sometimes ask the question, well, why did he allow himself to get enslaved? Why did he not just take over the planet? That was actually, resolved later on. And we'll talk about that later. But, he didn't have his full strength, but his strength is pretty considerable. There are a lot of comparisons to him in Superman. There's even some issues where he and Superman kind of come to blows, and Superman notes he's never been hit that hard before. But I wouldn't say that he is as strong as Superman. He's up there, but I think Superman kind of edges him out. He's got very good reflexes. Whenever he's in a fight, he often catches punches with his hand from his enemies. His speed, he's faster than human, obviously. I don't know if he reaches, they've never shown him go super fast, however. You've never seen him go light speed or, turn back time or some other Superman type of ability. Stamina, agility, he has all of that, higher than normal. One interesting thing that I noticed in reading the comics, and you guys can weigh in on this if you know differently. Have you ever seen him fly without his cape? I really question whether or not his cape is what allowed him to fly. And I read all the issues, and I was thinking back on it. I think all the moments you see him fly, he has his cape. The very first time you see him fly is when he is in his mansion and is being robbed, but he's wearing a robe this exact same color as the cape that he has on. So I really wonder whether or not he can fly without it. I don't know. It's just a shot in the dark. Anyway, near invulnerabilities. Can we go to the next slide, Derek? He's near invulnerable because he's got this weird quirk where he has to be ready for whatever blow is going to strike him in order to make himself invulnerable. If you catch him unawares, he can be injured. And this is one of the early issues. He's headbutted. He's smashed in the face. You see his face bleeding on that second page. So he's not entirely invulnerable. He's pretty bulletproof, but you've seen him take some damage. You go to the next slide, Derek. In a very early issue, he goes up against a character called Payback. Payback is basically if Wolverine and Hulk had a baby, you would call it what do you call that? That character they had from 5 years ago from Department H. It's irrelevant. They made a Hulk H type version. Wolverine H, Weapon H is what they call it. Well, Payback existed before that, and that's this character. And you see him cut him in the chest, and he's even surprised. He says, "I can't believe you cut me," because he was completely caught unawares. In a subsequent issue, he goes up against Boogeyman, which you see in the next page. Boogeyman also similarly clawed, cut him in the chest, but Boogeyman's like, "Oh man, you made my hand hurt. How did you do that?" Because he was prepared this time. So that goes to his invulnerability. Let's go back to his power sets. Accelerated healing that we noticed after he got cut in the chest by Payback. Energy projection. He's had a number of various energy projections that he does from his hands. He doesn't shoot beams from his eyes, but he certainly can generate tremendous amounts of power from his hands. Positron fields, he mentions that in an issue. I don't really know what that means. He mentions that as an ability. You see his hand glow, but he was able to generate some positron fields. Hand-to-hand combat, he can throw down. He's got some hands. He fights pretty well. He doesn't resort to a lot of energy projection, so quite frankly, he really just punches guys a lot. Law and mediation, that's just his ability to sort of analyze the situations. It actually comes to an issue of diplomacy. As a superhero, he doesn't always resort to his fist or powers to resolve issues. Sometimes he resolves issues simply by mediating them, using diplomacy, using logic to talk to people and get them to calm down and reanalyze their situation and see if this is really what you want to do. And that goes back to what his goal is, which is to try to inspire people to be their best versions of themselves. And he's, of course, multilingual. So let's go to Rocket and check out her abilities. So Rocket's really, really, really interesting because you actually see her belt grow with time. Her powers come from a belt, which we learn in a subsequent issue was actually a seatbelt in his life pod that got modified by Curtis Metcalf, the character we know as Hardware. Arnis, the icon, provided him the two seat belts from his life pod. Curtis was able to modify one of the seat belts in a very unique way that allows it not only to absorb inertial energy, but also project it as well in a unique fashion that had not been done before. And then Hardware had kept the other inertial seat belt for himself to use in his own armor for his inertial winder. But with this belt, she can absorb all kinetic energy. So what does that mean for her abilities? If you strike her, she can absorb that energy and project it back to her, use it in very useful ways. She can jump from very high distances off the tops of buildings, land softly, and use that energy to propel herself or make energy blows or make even fields of energy around people. There was a period of time when she got pregnant and she had her friend Darnice step in for her as Rocket, and Darnice had figured out to actually use that energy to learn how to fly. And she taught Raquel that, and so subsequently Raquel was able to fly pretty readily. She also was granted superhuman strength. She's able to throw a punch with a great deal of force. She's able to lift, cars and stuff with that kinetic field as well. It's a very, very unique power set in the way that it was portrayed. And just as an aside, the artwork by artist Mark D. Bright on these issues, the way that he draws her power field, because they've had other artists work on this book, But his artwork in particular, in the way that he draws her power fields, was very unique, very beautiful, and well rendered. So those are the power sets of these two individuals.
All right.
I do want to know, Paul, before you go on, that yes, he can fly without his cape. And he kind of uses a combination of all the different fields that you were talking about, especially magnetic field manipulation, and uses it all as such to fly. So if you see in the comments there, a couple folks mentioned that it was an episode or an issue where he went after Raquel at night, and he was in his pajamas at the time, so without the robe.
Yeah. All right. So we look at the origins of this character. We know that the origins of the first story, of course, takes place in issue 1. Icon isn't revealed necessarily. Well, he actually is revealed as being a being from another planet in the first issue, but you don't really get the full story till later on. Being a being from another planet, he takes the form of a black man. And what happened was the intelligence of part of his pod identified the first sentient or life being, if that makes any sense. And it just happened to be a woman in slave quarters. And we're talking about 1839. So naturally, the technology was that, okay, well, let me just conform or shapeshift, if you will, to this human form. It happens to be a black man. And so, the decision was made, I guess, to, reduce him to an infant. And so this slave goes out, sees this thing streaking in the sky. She goes over to it and she picks the baby up, and, the rest is history in terms of how he got there. The thought is, why would a superior being choose to be a slave? Let's address that.
Well, for one, he didn't really have a choice, right? I mean,
well, I think that's the biggest one. That's the biggest one, Paul. He really didn't have a choice, and the thought is, okay, our people, like it or not, hate it, love it, loathe it, or whatever. Slavery is a part of our, our history. You see people with cute shirts that say, that slavery interrupted history and all that stuff. And it sounds great and it's a little cute, but guess what? It don't remove the stain. It don't remove the horror of it. It's a part of who we are. And the only way we can actually deal with it and overcome it is embrace it. I think when McDuffie wrote this, he purposely did it that way to hold a mirror up to your face and say, hey, I know you proud to be black. I know you got the red, black, and green on, which is why he uses the colors that he does. But this is a part of the mirror I'm going to hold up to you. And he made him a conservative on top of that. And so when you think about it, what if in 1839, a black man, most likely in America, was a slave? If he was in the Deep South, absolutely. There were no free people in the Deep South. I know a lot of folk like to say that, but if we're just not being intellectually honest, if we have that thought process. Now, in being a black man in this particular time frame or whatever, he saw, the world wars, he saw the Civil War, he saw all of these different things happen. He's a very, he's 150.
Go to slide 13.
He's 150. He's been around, I should say. He's not 150 years old. He's been here 150 years old. So we don't really know how old he really is. But to suffice to say that in his sojourn, he became a lawyer. He got his degree from the HBCU. Shout out to Fisk University. He was well to do for himself. and how he made a living as an attorney, and he built a nice house, and that's how we come into how he meets Rocket. You know, she's out with her friends, and you know they decide they're gonna rob some people. They stop by his mansion. You know, it's interesting. So I was curious, Paul, why did you want us to come here? Let's look at what was your thoughts
Right, well,
towards it?
let's go a little bit deeper dive into his origins. Let's think about this. He was an alien whose job was as a mediator. He resolved disputes. He was, in essence, kind of a lawyer in his alien practice. We know that he had gone on vacation after a pleasure cruise on a starship after dealing with a very difficult case in which he had imprisoned a character called Calicak, who was for all intents and purposes, a murderous killer, which was unheard of in his society. So after he did that case, locked this guy up, went on a pleasure cruise on vacation. Ship malfunctioned, allegedly, and took the lifeboat to Earth. Landed in the deep South in 1839. And his life pod is set to have him become a child of whatever intelligent race he comes across. And he comes across a young African-American enslaved woman by the name of Estelle. Is raised as a slave as his powers grew, and he grew into maturity at the normal human rate. Eventually, he ended up going through the whole course of African-American history. He works in the Underground Railroad, right? He helps slaves. He uses his powers to the extent of helping free slaves and help them get to the North. Now, we learn in the subsequent issues when you find out the Earth is on trial for whether or not it should continue to exist or what have you. And he mentions to them, as he recounts his history, that the reason he did not take over the world. Sometimes people ask, well, why did you allow slavery to continue if you had all these powers? Well, it's kind of like Star Trek and the Prime Directive. That he was in their society, you're not allowed to interfere with a more primitive people's development. So that is the reason why he allowed slavery to continue. And he couldn't change out of his skin because the life pod, he's a lawyer, he doesn't know engineering and how to modify the life pod. So that's the reason he didn't interfere. So he did the best he could by maintaining, while still remaining in the confines of secrecy of who he actually was and what his powers are. And then he goes from working in the Underground Railroad to ultimately serving in the Civil War and fighting on the side of the Union. After the Civil War, he goes and gets himself educated. He moves up north because he wanted to be in the industrial North for a few reasons, not just because of the great migration from the South to the North, but he actually mentions that the reason he moves up north is that's where the industrial base of the United States was. And his hope was that the technology of Earth would reach a point that he'd be able to repair his life pod, and specifically the communicator on his life pod, so he can contact his people and go home. So he wanted to be in an industrial center to do that, not the agrarian South. So he settles to New York, goes to law school at Fisk University, gets his law degree, opens up a practice in New York, is living during the Harlem Renaissance. He meets a girl, ends up getting married. They don't have children. Unfortunately, he was afraid that his alien DNA might make some problems. His wife ultimately dies of cancer. I think that occurred somewhere around 1970 something, right? He's a Republican. He's a conservative. A lot is made out of that. Like, I don't like Icon because he's a black Republican conservative. But think about it. From his perspective, this is a very important point. He's immortal. as an immortal, he doesn't view things the same way that the normal person views things. He views things from a bigger perspective. He's got patience. You know, he doesn't get caught up in I'm not concerned about what happened in the last 5 years or 10 years or 50 years. You know, I'm immortal. I look at the big picture of things. He lived in slavery, went through the Civil War, went through Reconstruction, Harlem Renaissance. At that time, politically, the Republicans are the ones who freed the slaves. Abraham Lincoln was the party that freed the slaves. Republicans were the ones who were providing more benefits to African Americans at that time. It wasn't until the 1950s and 60s that you had a shift in the two political parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, where the Democrats started to give benefits to African Americans, and the Republicans became the ones that weren't interested in that. So from his perspective, there's also a basis as to why he was Republican, because that was the party that he knew. That's the party that freed him. That was the party that was providing benefits to him, to his people during that period of time as well. But what's interesting is that when his wife died, he retracted from society. So he focused on what he could control. His wife, he described his wife as the one who provided the emotional attachment that he had to humanity. She's the one that got him to view the struggle of Black people and say, there's something you can do to try to help them. She's the one that appealed to the softer emotional side of his nature. So when she died, he retracted back into himself and focused on those things that logically he could control. And that's getting money, his career, and what have you. So he moved out of Harlem and he moved to Dakota at one point, because young Edwin Alva was kind of like the head industrialist at the time. And he specifically moved to Dakota because he knew Edwin Alva's technology would be the one to catch up in the shortest amount of time to fix his communicator. He moved with the rich white folk because he just was disconnected from society. He just wanted to be rich. He wanted to get the money and influence necessary to have the resources to ultimately fix his ship and go home. And as a byproduct of that, he became disconnected to African-American culture. And it's not until he meets Raquel Irvin that she reminds him of his wife. And she appeals to his emotional and his sense of consciousness. And that is where Icon is born.
You know, it's interesting that the whole thought of him being a conservative and the news that Chief Justice Clarence Thomas, that was his favorite character. A lot of people got a kick out of that. And, you know, you mentioned about the Republican Party and their influence when in terms of Black people. You know, people, you know, talk about Lincoln, but we can go a little bit closer and talk about Dr. Martin Luther King, because King was a Republican. And this was in the 60s, in the late 50s and early 60s. So, you know, the funny thing is that, you know, I've had discussions with people when it comes to Icon and his thought, because some people thought that he was a coon or Uncle Tom or whatever. And I challenge people to read his book. I also challenge, you know, people to like really listen to what he said, because the night that he encounters Raquel and her friends, he's very direct in saying that, you know, you need to you know, find a different way, and you know, a better way. Lift yourself up by your bootstraps. You know, and he makes a point, I should say, Dwayne McDuffie makes a point to invoke Booker T. Washington into the discussion, and of W.D. Du Bois, because they were polar opposites at the time. And so you think about our history as our people, it concerns our people. Augustus is no different than any affluent Black people that lived. there are books on the black bourgeoisie that you can read right now, and many of them settled and lived in New York City. So, you know what I'm saying? This is clearly something that I think that Dwayne McDuffie intentionally inserted into this book, his character and this mythos of Icon, to prove a point that we're not all the same, that we're not a monolith, and that there's merit on both sides of the equation. When he meets Raquel, right, this 15-year-old impressionable teenager, right, one of her things is she wants to be a writer, but she says, I have nothing to write about. But she has read something, and that's one thing I would encourage anybody that is a writer. If you want to be a writer, you have to be a reader, okay? And she invokes the great queen, Toni Morrison, and says when she read a book called Song of Solomon about a man wanting to learn how to fly. And she said when she encountered Augustus Freeman, aka Icon, was the first time she ever saw it. After she has her introduction to Icon, it inspires her so much so that she goes to him the very next day or so.
Go to slide 11.
You know, and she, you know, tells him, you know, hey, I got this super fly idea. You should be a superhero, and I'm going to be your sidekick. One of the things I like about this exchange with them two is that Raquel is not ashamed to really be forward. She's never had anything really. She sees Augustus Freeman as someone who can help provide not only an opportunity for her, but ultimately an opportunity for him, because she brings him back into the lens of Black life, if you will. He's not hiding behind these nice, beautiful walls and, you know, that kind of thing. She helps him come out of that, and so she does a whole lot for him by just even approaching him with this idea. Because think about it, she's 15 years old. Augustus is well over 150 some odd years old, and she comes to him with this drawing of her and him being superheroes. Only the mind of a child, or as they say in the scriptures, out of the mouth of babes, that she's able to like show him something, and he's not put off by it at all. In fact, it's kind of like what he'd been looking for, because you can best believe, even as he drowned himself in his work, even as he drowned himself in doing the things that a lawyer does, and, you know, stacking paper and moving from city to city, trying to get the technology, because all Icon really wants to do is go home. She's given him purpose, which is why she reminds him of his wife, because she, you know, put those thoughts in his head. Why would an alien care about the people that he's among? It's only when this connection that she has. If he doesn't have that connection with his wife, then Raquel or Rocket doesn't exist, or is not possible. So, you know, shout out to Dwayne McDuffie and his incredible writing, man. I think enough cannot be said of the writing in this particular book. This is my Milestone books. Of the Milestone books, Hardware's my favorite character, but this by far is my favorite run.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Hardware was my favorite character, but Dwayne McDuffie did the most writing of all the. He touched on most of the Milestone books. He was definitely the editor of all of them. And he's done some writing on a little bit on all the books, but the book that he wrote consistently was this one, and it shows. The writing in this book is hands, no disrespect to any of the other writers, but his writing was just phenomenal in this book. There are just scenes in which he talks about things that we go through as a people, The interaction that Icon has with the community, because you think about it, you have this guy in this urban center where there's a huge impoverished section in Paris Island, and he's fighting crime, and he is dating the mayor, and he'll capture a criminal, tie them up, and drop them off at the police station. And these are criminals that people know from the neighborhood, and they're like, why are you just going after black people? All you're doing is being an arm of the police and rounding up black people, and they call him an Uncle Tom. On this slide that you see here, in the first page you see Raquel approach him about the concept of being a symbol to inspire people, Icon and Rocket, and it motivates something in him. And subsequent to that, they go out and they're doing their superhero thing. He ends up saving the mayor and is given the key to the city, but he goes through a lot of stuff where people are calling him an Uncle Tom and a sellout. And so he addresses the people when he gets this key to the city, as you see in the second page. And he's like, a lot of people ask me, or some of you may be wondering why I do what I do. If I have all of this power, why don't I simply just take over? And I can tell you that's never going to happen. And I don't do this because I'm trying to, because I'm better than you. I do have more powers than you, but that's not the point. I'm not using my powers to take over. I'm not using my powers to control you. I'm using my powers to inspire you. I'm trying to show you not what I can do, but what you can do and what is possible for you. And then he flies off and everyone's still like clapping their hands because they're like, wow, the dude's inspirational. He spends a lot of time just preaching to people, just trying to inspire them. And that's a huge thing. And one other point. This is a little nuance. The book is called Icon, but it is not about Icon. It's about Raquel Irvin. The whole book is really about Raquel. And I think they recognized that when they did Milestone 2.0, because the series was eventually renamed Icon and Rocket in recognition of that fact. But the book is always told from Raquel's voice. She's the narrator of the story, and things are told from her perspective. You don't often see artists do any narration in the story. It's really always Raquel's voice. And you think about her power set. Dwayne McDuffie's brilliant. You think about her power set. She talks about her powers to people. And she says, my power is that I absorb negative energy and I redirect it. Right? And there's a running theme that always recurs in this book, that a story that comes up. And it's her first meeting of Icon, of Augustus Freeman. And that's what was pivotal at that meeting. She goes to this house with a group of guys to help rob it. And her whole life is changed when she sees him fly in the air. And she goes, my whole understanding of reality changed because I saw a black man fly. Mm-hmm. And I saw what we are capable of. I saw what was possible in a way that I never thought was possible. It hadn't even crossed my mind, the possibility that a black man can fly. And that inspired her. And so Icon inspires her to want to be more. And one of the lessons that he teaches her, not just in his lessons of inspiring her and what he tells her, he gives her this belt whose literal power, it's a little on the nose, is to redirect negative energy for a particular purpose. And he goes to Rocket all the time, and he's telling you, you've got all this fire. You've got, Rich mentioned she's not afraid of speaking up for herself and speaking out. She's got that fire in her, and he's like, you've got this intelligence and fire. If you only harness that, you could do so much with it. And that is what her belt power represents. Is it's not the fact she's like, well, it's easy for you to say pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but we don't have any boots. He says it's not about that. I know your situation's messed up, but it's not focusing on how messed up your situation is. It's focusing on what do you make the best out of that bad situation and do better with it? And that's what her power set is. Take negative energy and make something positive out of it. It's an allegory, and it's a very clever one done by a very brilliant writer.
Yeah, so, I agree. I mean, if you look from the onset there, she actually, I mean, started off trying to rob him. Like, they're actually breaking into his house. So to have that type of turnaround from going from, you know, that type of negative energy to actually becoming a hero,
right,
and serving and protecting in their own community, I mean, that's a big jump from the path that she was on. And he's definitely an icon, or you know, a role model for that. So.
Right. Brilliant writing. Brilliant writing. Of all the Milestone books, this one, hands down, best written book.
Yeah.
Best written book.
And he like Icon gets a lot of flack for, I guess, the thing always people want to say is, why didn't he just come out and, you know, rescue everyone from slavery, save the black race, yada, yada. I mean, I think the way Dwayne McDuffie wrote it, it allowed someone from a different race, alien, however way you want to look at it, to actually experience what it's like to be black from the beginning, all the way up into modern day. And of course, he's going to be disconnected. I mean, he's 100 and something plus years old. Like, I mean, who wouldn't kind of lose some type of disconnect to the human race? Especially when you say, hey, his sole purpose was to just go home. So I think that kind of plays more play into him becoming, I guess, a bourgeoisie or a Republican of sorts or whatever, because he was chasing the money, he was chasing the tech, he was chasing the action just to get home. But
on the flip side, one of the quotes that comes up that McDuffie puts in this book is a quote from W.E.B. Du Bois, and he talks about the talented tenth. He talks about the fact that it is the most talented of us who need to lead and inspire the rest of us to be the most of what we can be, something to that effect, right? And when you think about it, this is a man who's lived 150 years through the black experience, from the worst part of it all the way up into present. And he has seen both sides. He's seen the best, he's seen the worst. But on the best side of it, he sees what black people are capable of doing. He's seen them in war. He's seen them in civil rights. He's seen them in Harlem Renaissance, what they can do with arts and culture. He's seen them from a legal perspective and politically. He has seen the pinnacle of black achievement. So the disconnect, when people are like, oh, you're an Uncle Tom, you're rich, you don't know anything about us. It's not that. He's seen it all. And he chooses to focus on the top of what we're capable of. And he knows that everyone, there's no difference between a W.E.B. Du Bois and a kid on a corner. It's just a matter of opportunity and initiative from his perspective. And that's what he's trying to inspire in people.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that I've always thought that the talented tenth doctrine or whatever is flawed, only from this perspective that a lot of the things that you are able to accomplish to be that 10% or part of that talented tenth is access, and if you don't have access, the fortunate thing about him is he doesn't see it as something of a virtue or a leg up. Was the technology that he comes from. I mean, this is the guy that was on an interstellar cruise. He wasn't thinking about crash landing into an antiquated planet where race becomes an issue, and the powers that be where he comes from, he tells them about how they do things, and they're like, what? I like the way Dwayne McDuffie writes about it, because it really, race in and of itself is a dumbass concept. Pardon my language. But it is.
He pretty much says that.
Written, it is written because it's like, if you read it and you think about it, it's like, you know what? This doesn't make sense. But he comes at it Augustus comes at it, or I should have said Arnis. Arnis comes at it from the perspective that he doesn't see it as race. He sees it as a caste system. Yes. Because caste systems are universal. And, you know, with a caste system, people are divided not along race lines, but generally on access. If you're poor or you're in a caste system where you're poor, that's kind of who you are versus a skin color. I mean, it's a brilliant comic book run, and I'm almost willing to challenge anybody to find a run of this length from this writer, from this team, that's better, because there's so much depth to it. Can we go to talk about the history of comics? I want to get into issue number 2.
Well, let's before we do that, because we've completed our segment of going through his origins and stuff, and we're now gonna go into the section talking about the key issues, the most important issues of this run, this fabulous run. But before we do that, let's pause for this brief commercial, and we'll be right back. Let's go.
Don't forget, go to blackcomiclords.net. Get you some merch. That beautiful shirt that Paul has on, you can get that. That sticker that Tameko just showed you, you can get that. You can get that on a shirt. You can get that on a mask. You can get that on a backpack. You can get that on a mug. You can get that on you can get that on anything. We got it for you. We got some heat for you. Go to our website, blackcomiclords.net. And check us out. Let's go.
And we are back.
All right.
If you haven't done so already, please take the time. If you like what you're hearing, if you like what you're seeing, take the time. Like the video that you're watching, like the posting, the sharing, share the video. And if you could take the extra time, particularly if you're on YouTube, subscribe to our channel. That's how we do all of this. It's a very minor thing. We're not asking you to dip into your pockets yet. We're just asking you to like and subscribe to our channel. And that's how we do what we do. Minor thing, minor thing. All right,
hit
Rich.
the notification bell. Hit the notification bell as well. So
yeah.
When we do go online, you'll know that we're doing our thing. So issue number 2, interesting title, Stop, Don't Hop on Cop. And as you can see, Icon has been black 154 years, but he's been black 154 years in a protected part of town. It's when he goes to hang out in the hood, or when he goes to, when he gets to, there's something happens with the mayor. The mayor gets kidnapped. So Rocket and Icon rush to help the police. Now, Raquel is the smarter of the two. She's like, wait a minute, you finna do what? Are we gonna just help the police? You don't help the police. You're black. You don't help the police. Because she understands the history that we have with law enforcement. It's not a very, very good history. But Icon, being who he is, has watched TV in his big house, big old mansion, probably had about a 50, 60-inch screen TV, and watched, black kids get shot down on the news every night. So it's easy how you can get your thoughts skewed. So he's going up to there like, officer, can we be assistants? They're like, yeah, hands up. Okay. So they're surrounded by the popo with guns aimed at them. A superhero, someone who comes to help. And this is where they find themselves. They fight a organization called SHRED, which means Special Heavy Equipment Rapid Emergency Deployment. Yeah, sound like an acronym for we kill people, particularly black people. But you know, Icon has this philosophy that if you do what you're supposed to do, if you comply, you'll be okay. Well, it doesn't kind of go down that way in this issue. They get a little aggressive. Icon's like, officer, I don't understand. And Raquel's like, duh. And so what I love about this particular issue is that here's the man who comes from a technological advanced society. Here's a man that has a lot of wealth, okay? Here's a man that has had access and has seen everything but Jesus. Okay, how is it that a 50-year-old black woman has more wisdom in dealing with law enforcement than this dude? When you grow up in the hood, there's certain things you've learned, you come to know and understand. And law enforcement is a part of that journey.
I mean, I think
go ahead, Mike.
I mean, if you look at it though, I mean, you got to still remember he's 150 years old, so it's a big leap from slave time when he first came around and did most of his growing with his mom and his life with his wife. So, I mean, Raquel is actually the perfect person to pair with him.
I get it, Mike. I do. I get that he's a full part but that he's just not. It's like, okay, so is it that I can go about my life, my daily routine? You gotta understand, people live this life. There are people that live in a bubble who don't think that law enforcement targets black people. Today, they live like this. Yet, they're not 150 years old. True. They see, they deal with the stuff. I mean, people really thought that when people were protesting in the streets over George Floyd, when they were protesting over Sandra Bland, there's so many names, Philando Castile, there's so many people that when we were in the streets protesting, there were many people saying, oh, what did he do wrong? What did she do wrong? Yeah, just comply.
Well, I think some of it is that it's that disconnect there. If you think about it from a perspective of he's super powerful, he can't be hurt, so he's looking at it from a stance of like, you know, it shocks him because it's like, why do I have to be, you know, quiet and bow down to someone that's weaker than me, that can't even harm me? So I think it's more to the brilliance of the writing that showing you how other people will operate in certain situations or whatever. I mean, he's rich, he's strong as can be. Like, who does he have to fear in that situation? And I think he exhibits that.
Right.
And then, hold on. The only point I want to say is that us from a black perspective, how we live, we kind of look at it as like, oh, well, you crazy. Like, how are you acting like that? I mean, I think that's just the point that I wanted to say is like, it's a difference. It's a disconnect right there. Because, I mean, he's not necessarily like us, but he is going through the experience. So I get what you're saying.
He's gone through the entire gambit of the black experience. I mean, there's an issue where he's being confronted on the street. People saying, you're not even black. You like, you know, Uncle Tom, etc. He's like, how dare you? How dare you say I'm not black? I know more about the black experience than you could possibly even fathom. But you also have to understand from his perspective, the concept of race, as Rich said, is kind of stupid. Like it's a caste system based on color. Like that doesn't make a lot of sense to him. And he explains it to the people on his world that way. It's an interesting question, what is it? What makes you black? You know, certainly one would think being a slave and pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps might qualify you to have a couple positive things to say.
Well, I will say this, Paul. You know who defines your blackness? White people. White people, colorism, the Willie Lynch letter, all of the things that we deal with as black people, our consciousness, our lack thereof, our struggle, our ability to get along with other people, is they defined it. They have defined it all.
But
now what we do,
defined it on something completely arbitrary. Because you know the thing is, no matter how rich you are, no matter how much education you have, no matter how big your crib is, what kind of car you drive, at the end of the day, there are people out there that's still going to call you a nigga, right? It doesn't matter. Augustus Freeman, it doesn't matter how rich and powerful it becomes. There are certain places there's people still can't go past the color of his skin. So in the sense of who defines blackness, sure, white people do it. But, you know, it's such an arbitrary thing. And the level of experiences between having that reflection put upon you and the fact that you could have, no matter what your life experience, from top to bottom, from left to right, have it be have ultimately that definition be based on such an arbitrary thing leads a lot in terms of the definition of what it takes, right?
Yeah. All I says no power outshines being black. That's what's up. Here's the thing about it though. When you think about our relationship with each other, a lot of times our differences have nothing to do with race. Our differences are ultimately class. That's one of the reasons why I love Dwayne McDuffie, because he's really taking the rich. Think about it. Icon is rich, affluent, lives in the suburbs. Raquel is in Paris Island from the hood, poor. Okay, they bring these two dynamics together, and it's amazing how it somehow or another it works. Some people may come to say, well, how are they able to work together? They come from so much two different worlds, literally, but they're able to do it because what brings them together is their desire for the people to be better. Their value. Icon has learned to love the people that he's among. He calls himself black. When you become a person that self-discovers, when you determine your blackness, everything outside of that, to your point, Paul, about it being an arbitrary thing, it's when you decide to say, you know what? I am black. When you make that declaration, because it's when all this propaganda and all this stuff that comes at us, one of the reasons why we do what we do in this space, due to how we were depicted in comic books and in public, I would say, newspapers and whatever, from the 1930s, 40s, and we do this because we are not satisfied with what they were giving us. Milestone started because we were dissatisfied with what they were giving us. The reason why this book is fire for what it is because we did not like what they were giving. If we're going to, or anything like it, we're going to determine that, not you. That's been the difference. So,
you know, there's an interesting part of the storyline where ultimately Arnis goes back to his home planet, right? And they're like, put the Earth on trial. That's irrelevant. The point is, he has the option. What is that? Oh, Mike's throwing up his issues.
Hey, that's what's up.
Mike's got some issues. Ultimately, he has the option of going back to his home planet after 150 years. He chooses to go back to Earth. He chooses to live as a human. But more importantly, they have the technology to go back to allow him to go back to Earth, and he can be any type of person he wants. He can go to any part of the world that he wants. He can make himself a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, white dude who's a billionaire and living in Finland if he wants to have that new perspective and not have to deal with the peculiar institution that is race. But what does he choose to do? He chooses to go back to Dakota. He chooses to help Paris Island, one of the poorest parts and most war-torn parts of the country. And he chooses to do that in the skin of a black man. I mean, is he black? He chooses to be so. I think that defines it more than anything else in the world.
Self-definition. Let's move move on. We've already hour in, and we haven't.
What are other hot issues?
We haven't even scratched the surface. So, icon number 8.
Good thing about this issue was the origin. It talks about the origin.
Yeah. Well, you know what's funny? The funny thing is, now hold up. Now, how can he be so naive if he made his living as an attorney?
Wow, that's a slap in the face.
You know what? Amani, listen. See, Amani is that dude. Amani is the fly in the ointment. You know, don't get Monty started on Spawn or any black character that has a mask on. Monty gonna give you the real on it. You know what I'm saying? He just cuts through all the fluff with it. But I will say, Amani, that to your point,
I don't think he's naive at all.
I think Dwayne McDuffie's writing is designed to give or spark conversation. And it's to ask those kind of questions. Because guess what, Amani? There are attorneys right now living in Park Avenue, living in River Oaks, living in affluent parts of the world. You know, hey, they could care less what's going on in the hood. It is what it is.
Yeah. Well, I feel like a lot of that. Go ahead, Paul.
I can tell you as an attorney, it's not about being naive. It's about having a different perspective. It's about being objective and looking at things from a larger, big picture. And when you have that training coupled with being immortal and being on a world for 150 years, his perspective is going to be a little different.
I agree. I also want to know that he's literally from a different race.
Exactly.
Yes.
And if you kind of look at it from the perspective of, let's say, a white person trying to understand all the nuances that go on with black people, I mean, they just wouldn't get everything. And there's white lawyers that still don't get it, even all the, crazy thing that goes on in today. So, I mean, I just want to just, kind of note that or whatever. Like, he's literally from a different race. Doesn't make it any better, but
no,
it is what it is.
Yeah. That's definitely a point taken. So, in looking at this particular issue or whatever, if you look at the panel that Derek has up for us, Icon is showing his kind of, he's sharing more with Raquel.
Yeah, at this point she doesn't believe him when she tells him that he tells her that he's an alien. She's like, I don't know anything about you. You know everything about me, but I don't know anything about you.
Yeah. And it's a tough thing to swallow because Raquel lives in a world that those kind of things are just not possible. Even though she's seen this man fly.
Yeah, but she's kind of assuming that he's just another bang baby.
He's 150 years old. Yeah. So he has to show her. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing better than being able to show and prove. And she still has reservations after it's all said and done. But, I think it's one of those things, too, that Icon, or should I say Augustus, is learning to trust more and more. Because you got to understand, this dude is, like you say, to your point, Paul, this guy's immortal almost, right? And he's seen everything. It's the reason why this man has only been married one time. Now, yours truly I've been around 150 years. I might go around the merry-go-round a couple times. One time. So he doesn't let people. And so he's always got people at arm's length. And so to like share or be open to who he is, I'm pretty sure to your point, Mike, is difficult. Because again, and to also you said it, he's an alien. She hasn't seen his true form. She is seeing a form that is pleasant to the eye. If you're a comic head, you know this is true when it comes to Martian Manhunter. Martian Manhunter, his form, his Martian form can scare you. So he chooses to walk among us as a human being, and people get mad and say, is Martian Manhunter black? But he chooses to be a black man. Shout out to DC.
Yeah, so in summary, the two pivotal things about this issue is he reveals to Rocket in this issue his origin as an alien. She just basically, I guess, assumed he was just another bang baby because it's Dakota. They see lots of superpowered people. So he reveals to her the fact that he's an alien. He also tells the origin of where her power comes from her basic glorified seatbelt. So that's the significance of this issue. Let's go check out the next issue.
Yes. Icon number 6. Now, this bad boy here, yeah, Icon runs into the blood sink. And I love
hilarity
ensues. I can't
ensues.
say this enough. I love Dwayne McDuffie because he doesn't make the Blood Syndicate goofy. They're not campy. No, this is a real gangster group. This is a real gang. They act like a gang, they talk like a gang, and they will beat the brakes off you like a gang.
Yeah, there was no caricatures in this. You know, it wasn't about throwing up gang signs and crip walking or anything like that. There was no caricatures in this. This is we about our block. This is our territory. You're infringing upon our territory. We don't care who you are. We'll give you 5 minutes to explain, and then we're going to kill you. And so Icon at this point has found out that something happened during the Big Bang, and it's a big secret. The first quarter of the run is Icon trying to figure out what happened during the Big Bang. Why do all these superpowered people happen as a result? And so he knows that the Blood Syndicate, who are the most prominent bang babies there are in the Dakota universe, he wants to go talk to them and get their perspective as to what's happening. The confrontation did not go well. No spoilers. But suffice it to say, they had a bit of a spat as a result that led to Icon getting his ass handed to him.
He kind of held back, though. He kind of held back, I feel like.
He kind of held back, but ultimately he got knocked the F out.
Yeah. Brick house.
Yeah. Rocket literally had to save him. But after all of that happens, one of the most important things that happens in this, let's go to the next slide, Derek, is he talks to them. And this is what I talk about when I say McDuffie's voice through Icon, it's not just about him having powers and beating people up. He really truly believes that his role is not just to clean up crime, it's to inspire people, inspire his people specifically to be better. And he says, look, I understand that you guys have had a rough life and you've had a rough lot in life, and etc. And he's like, well, we're a gang, man. We don't have to listen to this. He's like, yeah, well, I get that you're a gang, but I don't see you as a gang. What I see are warriors. And as warriors, you choose what battles you choose to fight and how to fight that. You own a block? Cool, that's fine. Who cares? As warriors, you can inspire others and you can own a lot more. Why don't you think about that instead of being so small-minded with what you're doing? And then he walks away. And then Wise Son, who's the leader of the Blood Syndicate, is like, you know what? I can rocks with this dude. Let's give him a break and let's follow what he says. You know? So, I mean, I just thought this is one of those moments where Icon's superpower is not just when we listed his superpowers and abilities, his ability to be a diplomat. That's literally one of his superpowers, an important one.
Yeah,
I do think that was some dope writing from McDuffie. Just connecting. I mean, like growing up in the '90s, gangs were prevalent, so to actually connect that into the comic books with readers and show you, you know, the truthness. Like a lot of comics, I mean, DC and Marvel definitely weren't doing the same type of writing. Like they weren't talking about gangs in the way that they got Milestone Media was. So I definitely think that was a big up to McDuffie right there.
Absolutely.
You know, it's interesting. It's interesting in that, you know, you talk about this particular book or whatever and how he talks to them. It shows Augustus Freeman or Arnest's growth, because you got to remember he didn't have that same conversation with the guys that broke in his house. But with these guys, you know, he gave them the respect that they would do, because that's the one thing that the hood wants more than anything from anyone outside the hood. The number one thing everybody wants is respect. Respect is
you notice that when he speaks to people, he never condescends, despite the fact that he's got all these powers.
Not at all.
He's never condescending to anyone.
Yeah, that's why Y-Son was able to really rock with him like that, because he saw someone who wasn't judging him. He saw someone that was really like this dude might really care about us. Let's see where this goes. And you know, it's ultimately, here's the funny part. This all could have been avoided if they had a conversation. You know what I'm saying? Icon didn't really have to get his head handed to him. He was like, wait a minute, guys. But what people do, or people that are territorial, because we're talking about a gang here, we're talking about a legitimate gang. They done ran the cops off. Nobody is allowed in their hood, not even the cops. So for them, it's like, okay, well, I see meat. What do you do to meat? You eat. And that's what they did. They threw hands, and after Rocket shows up or whatever, they have a conversation and they get to this point. But again, what I love about this, one of my favorite parts about Dwayne McDuffie is writing on Raquel, is that he gives Raquel a level of wisdom and the ability to intercede on his behalf. Even though he's the one that's helping her, empowering her, you know, all the long way, she's the one that is really doing more for him. That's why it's her story and not his story, because she's telling it, but he's the one that's being blessed by it. You know, it's amazing. You know, as someone that teaches and talks to children, you know, at my church, I'm always trying to teach them, but I find myself learning from them more than me teaching them. And I just see that dynamic here at play. And so the Blood Syndicate, they are a very complicated group. We're going to talk about them next week, so you guys stay tuned for next week, because it's going to be bananas. But I just like how they were able to work with one another. And in talking about this issue, can we just really deal with the fact that if you look at the cover of that issue, you see with the character DMZ. DMZ is probably the dopest character in the Blood Syndicate. But guess what? DMC's an alien. And the uniform that he wears, as weird as it is, that's the uniform of a police officer on Arnest's planet. Icon recognizes it and confronts him, but he won't talk to him. And he's talking to him like, who are you? Where have you been? You shipwrecked here too? All this, and the Blood Syndicate is looking at them like, what's he doing? Because DMZ don't talk to nobody. But Icon is talking to him like they know each other. And so it's an amazing thing. And, you know, DMZ takes off. He goes after him. And they have the conversation after he has the conversation with DMZ, because it's like, I see somebody from my home planet. He done forgot all about the Blood Syndicate. He done forgot that he done got his tail whooped. He's trying to go home. His whole thing is, listen, to me, this is like E.T. if E.T. was a black person. He's just thinking about going home. And it doesn't matter what he's facing or whatever, it's about him getting home. And if you think about us as black people, when we interact with one another, even those that are from the island like yourself, Paul, or even those that are from the motherland, all of us have a deep desire to connect to one another and go home and be home, especially African Americans. We live in this country. Our parents have lived in this country, but we know that this really isn't home. Not like that. And I think it's when we're able to have that kind of experience that DMZ had. And it's kind of funny because in the Black Panther movie, they talked a little bit about that with Killmonger and T'Challa.
All right, hold on. Let's get into Black Panther. We got a short time. We got to go on. We got more books to go through, bro. Let's go to the next book.
It's a deep rabbit hole, guys. I'm sorry. Why don't you talk about Payback, Paul?
All right, so you know, in investigating the Big Bang, you really sort of, issue 3 is where Icon really becomes aware that there's something going foul in Dakota. And Mike's holding up that issue. That's issue number 3. That character you see on the cover is Payback. Payback is literally the amalgam of the Hulk and Wolverine mixed together. Before, 25 years before that happened in Marvel Comics.
That's a lot.
He used to work. He's a guy who actually used to work for the mayor of Dakota, who Augustus Freeman's actually dating. He warned the mayor that the use of the experimental tear gas that was being pushed on them was a bad idea to use in the Big Bang. The mayor is like this Democratic mayor she's worried that because of that, she's being viewed as soft on crime. So she used the Big Bang, thought the Big Bang would be an opportunity to appear tough on crime by suppressing all these gangs and arresting all the gangs all in one shot. Backfired, killed a bunch of people, gave other kids superpowers. But Payback used to work for the mayor and wants to expose that, and holds her hostage. And Icon ultimately comes along and saves the mayor and gets the key to the city and becomes a hero. But at the end of the day, he also realizes when he's talking to Payback, why are you doing all this? He's like, you think that you know what happened to Big Bang? You really don't. And that's what sort of starts Icon investigation into the Big Bang, which happens over the next several issues. So that's the significance of issue number 3.
Hey, Tameko, you read issue 12.
I sure did.
Give us your perspective on it. Okay, why don't you give us your perspective on this?
What's significant about this issue?
Okay. Well, at this point in time, and this is about Rocket, she is juggling being a full-time student, part-time superhero, and also being pregnant. Now, she had already hashed out her decision with her mother and with Icon. So she's going on trying to do as much as possible before the baby gets here. So her friend, who is in an abusive relationship and who's also pregnant, comes out to Raquel, and she's trying to help her figure out a way out of her situation. So while all of this is going on, Icon has a potential new client who's not what he appears to be. So while he's doing all that, and he's also keeping an eye on Raquel because, of course, she's pregnant, and he's like, but you can't keep doing this for much longer. he actually threatens to take away her belt in this issue because, you know, he wants her to be safe and wants her to have the baby and be okay. So taking her friend to an abortion clinic, okay, friend's abusive boyfriend decides to come in and, of course, blow the place up.
Wow.
So they're in the middle of this delicate situation, you know, and of course Icon shows up a little late, so forcing Raquel to take on the situation by herself. So this was really ahead of its time.
Yeah.
I didn't think I really fully appreciated it when I read this as a younger comic head, but reading these issues over again, I see how they talked about the sensitive issues well before, you know, before being woke and having all this blowback now and having the Supreme Court try to take away the right to have an abortion in this day and age. So that's the significance of issue 12.
Yeah, it was really just a testament to McDuffie's writing and the fact that he decided to. This issue is really dedicated to that whole issue of teen pregnancy and abortion, and he did a brilliant job of looking at things from both sides of the perspective, because ultimately Rocket decides to have her child, but you have another woman who's like, well, what if I'm raped by an abusive boyfriend and I get pregnant and I want to get rid of my child? I mean, I don't want to go through that and have this man in my life, and you know, and handle it in a very sensitive and direct manner without shying away from anything. It was brilliant writing on his part. It's a standalone issue that was just ended up being a very special issue in and of itself.
Yeah, man. I mean, you know, it's interesting. It's the issue. It's not this issue, but one of the issues that stood out for me when Raquel was, you know, first finding out that she was pregnant was when she was sitting in the park, and we see her a lot. The common theme of her sitting in the park on the swing, and her mother or grandmother comes out to talk to her. And, you know, it's one of those things where she's thinking that, you know, grandmother's going to, you know, come down on me. And she didn't do that at all. She literally comforted her. And the cool part about it was, and I thought it was the realest part about it was, grandma say, I'm done raising children. You're going to have to raise this one. And she walks away. And I like that because that's real life. That happens every day. I wanted to say, when you were talking to Miko, you talked about how when you read this initially and how you've been able to reread it, you didn't have an appreciation for it. I think we all can agree that this particular run, that it is written so well that it doesn't feel dated.
No, not at all.
It actually feels very new and fresh. And so that's just amazing, man. So Tameko, appreciate your commentary on issue 12. Let's move right along. Man.
Oh, yes, this issue.
Hold on, Paul. We don't have 13? Y'all don't want to talk about 13?
I think we should talk about 13.
Man.
Let's skip ahead. Yeah.
Yes.
Let's skip 13. So, wow.
Okay.
This issue.
Listen.
My man Rufus T. Wild right there, a.k.a. Buck Nasty.
Go ahead, Mike. Break it down.
I mean, basically, as you can tell, this is a spoof on, not spoof or parody on Luke Cage. I mean, the cover alone is, I'm pretty sure, Icon 13 is always Christmas, and that's a play on Luke Cage's iconic word, Sweet Christmas, that was way back in the day. But it kind of spoke from like a blaxploitation, so to speak, where he's a hero for local folks. He also takes money for work. Pretty much everything, all Luke Cage. I mean, down to a T. So I guess you would call it a homage cover, but it also kind of joked into the fact that Marvel was actually using blaxploitation to actually sell comics and interpret our people in their way. So being somebody from the 90s or whatever, I kind of like this cover because, I mean, look at it.
Well, you know, Mike, remember we had the discussion when we did the Luke Cage Roundtable about how the initial Luke Cage books were fine, but it was people that were outside of the Luke Cage writing team that he would be on. He would be in different books that took liberties to create and write him in a very stereotypical way. But shout out to Dwayne McDuffie again for being the biggest troll. Listen, when I first read this, when I reread this, you know who I thought about? I thought about Herschel. I said, if Herschel was, this sounds like something Herschel would do. The whole issue is very comical, very hilarious. I mean, what I loved about the writing team and Milestone is that they never took themselves too seriously. They could do real serious work and talk about some real deep issues, and then they'll hit you with this, because as funny as this issue was, oh my God, the one issue, I don't think we're going to be able to talk about it, but there's issue 30 where it says cancel Christmas. OMG. I laughed hard when I read that book. I mean, you know, because it was clear to me that when they wrote this, the people at Marvel had to cringe when they saw it, because they're like, I don't believe he did that. And here's another thing too. I don't just think that he was going just simply at Luke Cage. I think he was throwing a shot at Tyrok as well.
Black Goliath.
Yeah, Black Goliath. I mean, he got a few shots in this one issue. Now, to your point, Paul, we talked about it behind the curtain about how he became four like characters.
Yeah, here's issue 30 right here, right? And in this issue, you actually see different versions of the character. You've got
that is a funny book.
Buck Goliath,
oh my God.
which is an ode to Black Goliath. You've got, well, I mean, here's an homage to Max Julian from The Player. Blaxploitation. You haven't seen The Player.
Max, you talk about The Player.
You got him playing Jim Crow, which is a play on the Falcon, right? You got his partner, geriatric Captain America there.
That was Patriot right there the other day.
And then you got him as Buck Lightning, which is a play on Black
Lightning.
Yeah,
he's Kingfish.
And there's the Kingfish, which is a sort of a combination between Tobias Whale and
Kingpin.
The Kingpin.
Oh, that was on one the whole time.
Yeah, but you know, I tell you what,
one, bro,
if you go,
that last one was...
They digged on Brother Voodoo too as well.
Oh, that's right. They had a Brother Voodoo. Let me pull that up.
That's not what I'm talking about. The last one. Man, that was funny. That was funny.
They also had Brother Voodoo.
Yeah, that was.
So ultimately, just so you know, story wise, he dies. Buck Wild dies when he backtrack a little bit. Icon goes back to his world. Raquel is super pregnant. She's in her 3rd trimester. She can't go out superheroing anymore. She's just not physically capable to do it, and her partner's gone. So she's got to find replacement. She has her best friend Darnice, gives her the belt, trains her, gives her the costume, makes her be the new Rocket. But she can't do it by herself. So they need someone to fulfill the role of Icon, because ultimately Icon and Rocket, they're there to inspire people and be the hero to the community. So there needs to be someone in the role. The only person they can find to fill the suit, literally, is Buck Wild. Buck Nasty. So they put him in the suit and so you got Buck Wild and you got Darnice as the new Icon and Rocket. Long story short, in the course and scope, and we're going to talk about issue 25 in a minute, he dies. and this is his funeral. And everyone, this is the blaxploitation. It's like a player's funeral. So you got your Max Julian character, you got your Cleopatra Jones character, Lysistrata Jones, who's one of his arch nemesis, who's like, you know,
Paul,
be careful,
Paul.
You know, I will tame you with my pea whip.
Yeah, now that I was wondering if you was gonna say that. That was hilarious. She has a whip.
I will tame you with my pea whip. And so ultimately, Kingfish here is like, you know, I am defined by my nemesis. You know, I can't exist without having my nemesis Buck Wild there. So I'm going to bring him back to life. I'm going to take out this gem of Sidorak or whatever it is and plop it in his dead body. And he brings him back as Buck Voodoo, a version of Brother Voodoo. And they're like, what is Buck Wild saying? They're like, we can't hear under these drums that are sort of a play on the whole Brother Voodoo and the drums that are always playing. If you are a fan of blaxploitation films, if you are a fan of Bronze Age black superheroes, because mind you now, and I learned this when I saw Dennis Cowan do his Milestone presentation back when I was in college, and they're talking about this. Understand, black comic collector fans, pick out all of your black superheroes from the Bronze and Silver Ages, with the exception of Black Panther. 9 times out of 10, what did black characters have in common in their costumes? The V-neck. The V-neck. The chest was out. Why? Because the creators wanted to make sure that you knew that these characters were indeed black. So you had to see their black skin. So all these characters had the V-neck. So, you know, Brother Voodoo has his V-neck. You know, even when Buck Wild became icon, he miraculously, his costume had the V-neck. It's just little things like that. It's really an homage to those characters, these two issues.
Yeah, now Paul, go back if you don't mind. Scroll back, bro, because I want people to understand the significance and the genius of Dwayne McDuffie. Go back. Well, Icon is doing the eulogy because that's critical. If you go back to that part where he's doing the eulogy, okay, he is talking about how, yes, the things that Buck Wild did, you know what I'm saying, it was cringeworthy, but it had merit. And what he was getting, what Dwayne McDuffie was saying, yes, I am trolling Luke Cage, I am trolling Black Lightning, I am trolling all of these characters, but I understand that they were necessary.
Right.
They were necessary. And because they were necessary, you can celebrate them.
Let's just read this. Let's just read this speech by him. I'm considered by many to be a hero, an example of possibility and achievement. And recently, Buck has patterned himself after me. But years before I arrived, Buck Wild was already here, fighting the good fight. Although we, from our current perspective, have found him crude and ill-informed, we cannot deny his importance. Intentions count as much as actions, and Buck was nothing if not well-intentioned. He spent his life fighting for what is right, all the while struggling with questions of identity and public perception that we still do not have answers for. He reinvented himself time and again, searching for a comfortable way to present himself to the world. And while we winced on occasion at his embarrassing speech and demeaning behavior, more often we cheered him on, as we did the day he gave his life for us. This is a commentary on all of these old black characters that were written oftentimes by certain writers as caricatures. And when we're looking at this from a 21st century perspective, we cringe at the way some of these black characters were treated back in the day. And so you fast forward to Milestone 30 years later, and Milestone's like, you know, we're Black creators and we recognize how poorly treated these characters were. We don't want to do that. We don't want to redo that. We want to put weight on these characters that we're going to create new original characters, and we're not going to reinvent the mistakes of the past. We're going to treat the characters the way they should have been. But understand, McDuffie, Cowan, all these guys, they grew up with those characters too. They wrote on those characters too. They have respect for those characters. And that's what this speech is about, is we can have respect. We can pay homage to these characters, but we know that they played their role. And we're now taking that foundation. We're moving forward, but in a different direction. That's the significance of these issues.
Yes, sir. So, issue 25.
Very significant issue.
Which is a big issue.
This is a big issue.
We have not talked about Icon's, any of really Icon's nemesis.
Yeah.
And this is the biggest nemesis in the Icon book. It's called Oblivion. Paul mentioned his name earlier. Before, he was a criminal that of Arnis, Augustus of Icon, locked up. And so somehow or another, he was able to sabotage the pod or the ship that Arnis was on. They fell to Earth. And it's interesting that they wear a similar uniform. So, Paul, you want to talk about this issue? That'd be dope.
Yeah, so his real name is Kalikak. And he was in Arnis's society, in his the place that he's from, the collective is what's called, which is a group of planets of civilized worlds. They have done away with death. They've done away with crime for the most part. This guy was antisocial. He is a worshiper of death. But for a society where immortality exists, they didn't understand, why is this guy going around killing people for kicks, knowing that we can still bring people back? It just seems antisocial. And Arnis, as the prosecutor, basically says, well, let's just lock him up, which for someone who is immortal is considered cruel and unusual punishment. So he ultimately gets put in like this, after Arnis gets trapped on Earth, Kalikak is basically put in like a low security, facility, and he kills everybody. Kills his therapist, his psychotherapist, kills all the guards, and escapes. He sabotages Arnis' ship before all this happened, and that's how he got trapped on the planet. But he wants revenge on Arnis for dare to lock him up and give him that torture of being immortal and locked up. He comes to Earth. His power set is basically, imagine, in terms of his personality and powers, a Terminator 2000 mixed with General Zod, mixed with Doomsday, mixed with Killmonger. That's who this guy is. That's the level of nemesis that he is and the power sets that he has. He can turn into this goo. He can create edged weapons. He's indestructible. Even when he's defeated, he is indestructible. Comes to Earth, impersonates Arnis because he's got the cape, and that's all people see. And he's wiping out people just for kicks. Just for kicks. This is the first time you see Icon really have a nemesis. And they go into a far more detailed background into Icon's origin background and where he's from. You get to learn more about his world and where he's from. So this is a pretty significant issue. And then on top of all that, it's their 25th anniversary issue. It was a big milestone for Milestone, to reach that 25th issue.
And also on the cover, isn't this Darnice as Rocket?
Yes.
Yeah, it's Darnice, absolutely. So let's move along.
Next issue.
So Icon 31.
Good luck finding this issue.
Yeah. Icon 31 is a very special issue because it is a homage to Batman #1. You can see the original cover of Batman and Robin, and then we see to our left the Icon and Rocket homage. And so dope issue. Good luck finding this. It's not easy to find. And if you can see for yourself, 99 cents. So
it's the hardest book to find of all time, man.
Yes.
Or 85 cents if you're 20-something-year-old me and you bought this for your pre-order back in 1994.
Yeah, back in those days. But again, this is a dope issue. Now, this particular issue is where Rocket goes to represent the planet, and she is there to like give them or give her side and Earth's side of the story, because they want to deal with Earth, and we're talking about them where they want to pretty much eliminate it or overtake it or whatever. But they don't want to just leave Earth to themselves because they feel like they have not evolved enough. With all the technology that they do have, even though it's still a primitive planet. Shout out to Tameko. With the Icon, I got one too.
Flex. I got one too, but it's in my box.
She wants to just speak up for her people, and so she's very passionate about it. And I want to show y'all, if you don't mind, I mean, Derek, if you don't mind, I want you to big this up. I showed this in the book. I mean, in the Facebook group. That is beautiful.
That's beautiful artwork. Right?
Yeah, the artistry of this is amazing.
Yeah,
I just love Rocket's hair.
That was one of the unique things about this book. Most of the Milestone books, they had their initial artists, which had the preeminent runs, but Icon had the most consistent creative team throughout its run. The creative team of Dwayne McDuffie and Mark D. Bright. Mark D. Bright was just one of my favorite artists from back in the day. He's the one that quite honestly got me into, getting more hardcore into my collecting, because it was his run on Iron Man when Rhodey became Iron Man that really got me into, collecting that run, because I loved his artwork. And at the time, I didn't realize that he was black until much later. I just knew he drew black people better than most other artists.
Yeah, that's what's up. So,
but one other thing. He grew during this run, not only as an artist, but as a writer. And they mentioned that, I think towards the end of the run, that he actually became a full-blown writer on the run and replaced McDuffie on the run at one point.
Yeah, I mean, McDuffie definitely did the lion's share on this run. There's only a few other writers that have been on this run. It's interesting. The question frustrated fans was, why is this issue so hard to find? Well, I think it's two things. One, I think the print run on it is kind of low, and then two, it's an homage to Batman #1. Okay, Batman #1 goes for major dough. We're talking millions of dollars. And so for them to do a homage to it or whatever, you know what I'm saying? I mean, check out, you got your man up there, Icon, in the Batman, or like in the Batman kind of, form. That's just an amazing cover, you know what I'm saying? But that's the reason why it's so hard to find. There's nothing special about it as far as the story. The story is good and the art in it is good, but this is pretty much the biggest cover for Icon is concerned. There are other books that I want to share as far as covers and other books that we probably don't have listed here in our presentation that are dope. But I don't know. Do we have any other slides with other books? I think this is it, right, Paul?
Derek, do we have some more? We're going to move on to this point, to the presence in the DCU.
Okay. So as far as the presence of the DCU goes, Icon and Superman have, kind of battled a couple of times. And when Milestone was kind of you know, kind of drifted off or whatever, and McDuffie left, you know, the company and began to write for Justice League of America, he did a milestone event. As you can see there in issue 27 and issue 28. I think that's 33 and 34. And so he was on Justice League for a while. And I will tell you this. The Justice League America run by Dwayne McDuffie is amazing.
Yeah.
It really, really is. You will enjoy. And what I love about McDuffie is that he brings in other characters. You know, you're going to see Steel, John Henry Irons in his book. You're going to see other characters. And, you know, he you know, that first book that you see, that 27, you see Superman and Superman and Icon locking hands or whatever. Frustrates the Icon will really beat the crap out of us.
Not so fast, frustrated. It's not as simple as that.
I will say this. The dope part about it is that actually they are friends. And that's one of the things that you learn about in this book, because they kind of put on a show. And Paul talks about this. Paul, why don't you tell them real briefly about this particular issue and the dialogue that they had?
I mean, yeah, they're when they first went up against each other was when there's a character called the Rift.
Yes.
Who was a super being, kind of a Beyonder type guy who created, you know, these two universes, the DC universe, the Milestone universe. And he's like, you know, which one? He basically says he has Icon in one hand and he's got Superman in the other. And he says, there's only one of your universes that I'm going to allow to exist. And I'll let you guys battle to figure out which one it's going to be. And you're listening to the thought patterns of both Superman and Icon. And Icon's like, well, I don't know the Superman guy very well. He seems like a cool dude, but, you know, I feel more comfortable winning this battle, knocking him out, and saving Dakota. Then I'll find a way to save Metropolis. And Superman's like, well, you know, I can't allow Metropolis to get destroyed. So I'm going to save Metropolis by knocking out Icon. And then, of course, I will see what I can do about Dakota. And then you see them battle it out. They're both somewhat ambivalent about having to fight each other. And it's kind of a standstill, you know, their battle. The question is it a standstill because they were both holding back? Or is it a standstill because their powers are equivalent? I don't know. However, you see in this issue, which is from, this is not from the Justice. Is it from Justice League?
Yeah, it's from the Justice League. Yeah, that's it.
This is also from Justice League. So in this, they have to stage a fight because the shadow cabinet's on one side of the equation, Justice League's on the other. And they've got to sort of get the two groups to work together. So Superman and Icon talk in advance, say, you know, let's stage this thing where we're battling it out and our two groups have to kind of, you know, work together. And so Icon punches Superman right out of the space station, out into space. And the Justice Leaguers are like, wow, can't believe he just knocked Superman the heck out. There's this dialogue between the two of them you see on the second page where Superman's like, it's been a long time since anyone's ever hit me that hard. Like, you know, Doomsday is the only dude who's ever hit me that hard. And Icon's like, yeah, my hand's broken and it's going to take a few minutes to heal. So who's stronger? I don't know. I don't know.
What I like about it, though, is the fact that they both respect one another. And they have a kinship in that they're aliens. They're living on a planet that is not their own. They've made a home for themselves there. So naturally, why would they be enemies? You know what I'm saying? I think that's the one thing that I like about it. You know what I'm saying? I know that a lot of people don't like the Boy Scout. I'm not one of those people. I love Superman. My nerdom goes back. Superman was the first hero I saw in the movies. Christopher Reeve played Superman in the movies. I was at the movie theater, and when he crushed General Zod's hand, and you heard that da 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 da, I was one of those kids that lost their mind in the day.
You know, and as you say that, I really question if Dwayne McDuffie is a Superman fan too, because of that line of because you and I are old enough that we got to see Christopher Reeve fly.
Yes.
In the theaters in 1978. And I remember being a little kid seeing that dude fly on screen and really truly believing, wow, a man can fly. And that's the preeminent line, the preeminent line that you hear throughout this series is Rocket seeing Augustus Freeman fly and says, I can't believe I saw a man fly. So you kind of wonder if McDuffie in a way was kind of a fan of that fact.
And Superman actually inducted Icon into the Justice League. So if you watch Young Justice, he actually gives him like a nice little bid there too. So
yeah,
I think he definitely was a fan.
Yeah. I mean, he did the movie All Star Superman by Grant Morrison, but he directed the cartoon. Great cartoon. I mean, matter of fact, I would say it's the best Superman cartoon you could watch.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yes. Go rent it. Go watch it. Stream it. Find it somewhere. But yeah, All Star.
Which one was that? Which one was that again?
All Star.
I have the comic book series and the movie, but I didn't realize that he directed that.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that was Dwayne McDuffie, man. McDuffie did a lot, man. But I want to before we get to the future, and I know Tameko got some fire covers to show us. Can we just go through a few comic books, man, as far as the Icon covers are concerned? This is probably my favorite. If anybody can show me, please. I just love this.
That's Darnice on the cover.
The new Rocket on the cover. You know, she puts Rocket. You know, she just fights. I just like her swag.
People try to actually argue that that's Rocket's first solo cover. Although it's an Icon book.
Yeah.
And it's not her, so.
Comics, guys.
It's the mantle.
Comics. Here's another one. Yeah. Here's another one. This is Icon number 37. This is actually story from the Honest tells Rocket a story about his time during the Harlem Renaissance. Dope story. You should pick this up. You should pick up the whole Icon run. But that's another one. Here's the heartbreaking thing. I'm not sure how true it is, but I believe it is. This is Icon 42. This is the last book of the run.
Yeah. You know what's interesting?
I also believe this is the last book. Go ahead, Paul.
What's interesting about that book is there's no superhero action. It has to do with the death of Raquel's grandmother, who was a powerful force in her life. But when you read the letters page in the back of that book, there's no mention of the story of the run ending. They're like, literally that line I was telling you about with Mark Bright being named a regular writer happens in that book as well. They're like, yeah, Mark Bright has been doing such a great job. He's going to now be a full-fledged writer at Milestone and writing the next issue of Icon. There's no reference to the book ending. So the book ended, but it was not supposed to. It just got canceled or it just stopped. But I don't think it was their intent to end the series with that issue.
Well, here's the thing about this particular book, though. I also believe this might be the last for the 20s cover. That was issue 37. But I also believe this is the last Dwayne McDuffie Milestone book.
For the original Milestone run, yeah. I mean, they later had the rebirth of Cool.
Yeah. And so it's interesting. I mean, this is a beautiful issue for the last one. It's a real beautiful issue. It's like a one shot almost where Raquel is dealing with the loss of her grandmother. And, it's just this is a coming of age story of a young woman who meets a black man who happens to be an alien. And we see her come of age. We see her become a mother. we see her become a excellent superhero, and we see her grow and develop. And you know, through all of the trials and the different things that she's gone through, she's been strong. And so we see her lose the matriarch of her family, which is her grandmother. And you know, it's a heartbreaking issue, and it's also a sobering issue, because again, you know, this was the last, I want to say the last original Milestone McDuffie story. You know, of course, he did the Rebirth of Cool, you know, and other things like that, but it was very unceremoniously. I mean, you know, what I want to see is a documentary about how everything ended at Milestone. Shout out to y'all, Milestone, but we really need that. We really need that tea.
Yeah, I think that story is tied up in litigation. I don't think we're going to hear that anytime soon, unless we speak to someone of the insiders.
We're not going to hear it. No.
I want to see the
Tameko is going to bless. Yeah, Tameko is going to bless us guys with these fire covers from Milestone 2.0, and she wants to share. So, Tameko, what you got?
All right. Now, you know, in regards to DC covers, current DC covers, the better art is usually on the B cover. But for this particular series, all of the fire covers were A's. And they were all done by Taryn Clark. So we're going to show those. But the one issue of note, the one variant of note, okay, and it is, of course, Icon and Rocket, Season 1, Number 1. This is cover D. This is the Reina Cayano cover, okay? And this one is a 1 in 25 retailers. So if you already know how we get those, is that if you get 25 or more of the cover A's, you'll get one of these. Now, this one I had to acquire from a different space because, of course, my LCS didn't order as many Rocket and Icons as they should have. And the ones that did have was rent money. And I said, no, nope, not going to do that. So I went searching around and I found this particular one on Mercari. Now, if you don't know about Mercari, Google her and say that Tameko sent you. But this one here. And it's real nice, and I paid a really decent price for it. It was above cover, but I still paid a decent enough price. Because, you know, I don't like to spend a lot of money.
Yeah, that's a $30, $40 book right there.
Mm-hmm. So
now I'm saying that's a $30 to $40 book. Yeah.
Yeah. Even though the rule of thumb is for the ratio variant covers is whatever the number is usually what you should pay for it. So that was a 1 in 25. So you really shouldn't be paying more than $25 for that cover.
Right.
So
I have that cover you're holding as a poster behind me right now. I love that cover.
All the fire covers in this series were cover A's. And they were all done by Taryn Clark.
Yeah.
And these, of course, they're beautiful because I looked at them and then I looked at the B covers and I was like, the B covers don't look as good as these. So that's why I made it a point to make sure to get all of these. This is cover 1.
What's interesting about that cover also is they had actually changed the color scheme for Icon a couple years ago. And he was originally going to have a red cape. And then they released the image, and all the old school Milestone heads like myself complained and said, that's not Icon. Give him his green cape. And they changed the color scheme.
All righty. Issue 2.
Yes, sir. That's it. That's a nice one.
Because these covers are so pretty.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're very pleasing to my eye because that's pretty much the main reason why I would even bother picking up more than one copy of a certain comic book.
And as we mentioned before, Rocket is now part of the title of the trade.
Yes. So she is featured prominently in pretty much all of these. Well, all except for the last one, but you'll see that one. Okay. Wow. This one was a good one. Number 3, where they burn up the cocaine fields and the poppy fields,
Yeah.
putting a dent in the drug trade. And like I said, this one was really awesome. I was like, I should have gotten the Virgin cover to this one because this is really pretty.
You know, what's interesting about Milestone 2.0 season 1, or however you want to call it, we were talking about how, you know, for Rich and I, Hardware was our favorite character, but Icon was the best written book. Same thing with Milestone 2.0. The Icon and Rocket series of the new version of Milestone was clearly above and beyond the best written book, with Blood Syndicate now being, by Jeffrey Thorne, a very close second.
Definitely. The favorite. This is issue 4.
That's my book.
I saw this in the previews, and I said, okay, I have to have at least several copies of this one because
that's my book.
It's really cute to see Rocket, you know, throwing up the middle fingers up.
I need that Wanted poster as a poster on my wall.
Definitely.
That is hilarious. I just like the way Icon is just kind of like, it is what it is.
Icon's like, you know what? That's my Rocket, you know. That's my girl. What can I do about her?
I can't take her anywhere.
So we have to talk to Torrin and see if we can get some prints and some posters made. Definitely. Okay. And the cuter one, this is like the runner-up, okay?
Yeah.
Where she meets Static. Well, no, let me rephrase that. She meets Virgil, okay? Because they meet at school. And then later on, doing superhero shenanigans, she meets him as Static.
Yeah.
Right.
And of course, they're trying to, you know, put them together and things like that. But Raquel's not having it. She's not having it. And she's not even close to entertaining anything while she's doing her superhero thing.
Right.
So,
what issue was that? What issue was that?
Issue number 5 of the 6-issue series.
What's funny about that particular book and with those two characters, you know, I showed you the last book of the first run, Icon issue 42. There's a few panels in there where, you know, she's going to prepare to bury her grandmother, and so Virgil and his mother comes over to the house, and he watches the baby, right? And so when the funeral takes place, Raquel's father is there, and he meets Static, and so he doesn't know who the father of the baby is, and so he asks Static. He says, Virgil, are you the daddy? And Virgil's like, she wouldn't even let me. I just thought that was so funny. It is. I just don't know if they'll ever be together, but that chemistry is there. So, you know, we'll see.
We'll see in season 2. And this one is number 6. Now, this one was wild, okay? Because this is where Icon meets up with the other alien who was also hanging out on the planet with him.
Yeah, that's in essence. I wasn't able to determine until I reread all these issues. In essence, they've recreated the Oblivion character with that guy right there.
Yes.
And indicated that instead of escaping and then coming into present time, he basically landed on Earth around the same time as Augustus. So I thought that was an interesting twist. But what I love about that cover is the background. Seeing Rocket in the background in red with the yelling and the emotion of that's really makes that cover special.
Yeah, because this is the closest, she's seen to Icon possibly being defeated. And it's a scary, scary thing. And I'm not going to spoil it. No, you just have to get these issues and read them to figure out the significance behind this battle.
Yeah.
So
such a great series. Oh my God, it was so well written.
So like I said, all the Fly covers were cover A's in this series.
Shout out to Reggie Hudlin and Neon Chills for writing a really dope series.
Shout out to them for not making us pay an extra $1 for good covers.
Yeah, that was great. Like all those covers could have all been incentive covers. They were that good.
Yeah, no doubt. Well.
Mike said he wanted to say something.
Well, just while we on the covers, since she's a cover B fan, so I just wanted to show the cover B as well. Got a glare to it. There it is. It's just got Icon and Rocket on the cover.
OG Icon and Rocket.
Yeah.
That still doesn't outshine the cover A. That's why I don't have it.
For sure. I'm definitely a fan of that. Tiana Taylor is who I always call this cover right here. That's what straight fire me of right here. So to me, this is the one to have as far as the modern covers is concerned. So I agree with her there. And I also have cover C, which gives
it's the Douglas Braithwaite cover, who's the artist on the interiors of the entire series.
It's a dope cover. I actually have a few copies of these, so I don't know how we can try to figure out some type of giveaway or whatever. I'll be down to donate these to maybe a fan or something next week or something. However way we can work that out. So,
well, I think for giveaways of that, Mike, we need people that have liked the video and have subscribed to our channel today can be entered into such a giveaway. Just throwing it out there as a possibility. Now, if you end up giving away one of those 9.8s, I will just send you my address, and we can just do that directly.
I do want to note, so I wasn't able to find the Batman cover, but I did find the Worlds Collide cover, and to me, it's kind of similar in sorts to it. This is her first time meeting Superboy when she actually transfers over, and that's Icon 15. If you can see that there.
Yeah, he was crushing on her series.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Until Static blocked him and said, "Yeah, you want to get with this pregnant woman? Good luck to you."
And then I also want to note that so there's two covers. The cover one.
Yeah, that's my favorite one of the two.
This is the one that most people are familiar with. You'll see more slab numbers or more copies of this version compared to this version.
Right.
To me personally, this one is the more sought after one. We got into a little discussion a while back about what is Static's first appearance. So in my opinion, Icon 1, 1993 is Static's first appearance because there's a preview in this issue that predates the Static book as well as the Hardware book. So I think it was like Hardware 4 or so. So I'm not 100% on this, but this is my personal opinion of Static's first appearance right here. Icon.
All right. So that's what's up. Yo, speaking of that, real quick, Derek, can you put the camera on me? I'll show this one book. I ain't got no flex stuff, but I will show you something I do have. This is Icon number 1. It's signed by M.D. Bright and Nicole Giddens, the legendary colorist for Icon. Actually, it's signed a couple of times on here. I think that this may be one of those issues where they were first putting the book out and they just was like having some fun with it, figuring out, okay, we're going to be rock stars, so I'll sign it up here, then I'll sign it down here. I'll sign it down here. So it's like 3 or 4 signatures on this particular number 1. So that's my little flex as far as Icon goes. Man, I tell you what, guys, the time in this is long past, but we have to get ready to get up out of here. Next week, Blood Syndicate. And I promise you, we're going to bring the ruckus. Because when you're talking Blood Syndicate, you are talking all things gang, all things the Black experience, all things people. Milestone was legendary for their inclusion of LGBT characters. But this was a fire book. And the people that wrote on this book, amazing. Shout out to Ivan Velez in particular. I don't know if we're going to be able to reach out and get to him, but, hopefully We're going to try to work some magic this week. So just stay tuned for next week for Blood Syndicate. As we get ready to get out of here, I want to ask my panel, do we have any closing thoughts? For everybody, watch the HBO Max documentary, Milestone Generations. It's a dope documentary. It's 48, 50 minutes or so. I promise you, you'll be blessed by it. And also the Secret History of Comics, the Color of Comics. You know, you can get that on YouTube. You know, you can find it for free. You didn't got to pay no money for it. But that's a very, very dope documentary as well. You see a young Dennis Cowan and Derek Dingle sitting there. So that's what's up. Frustrated Fan Sports says, thank you, panel. You have made me a far better collector for Black comics. Thank you, sir, for participating. We thank you for your presence. As we close
Derek
out,
mentions that we have the ability to do a random drawing now, if Mike is so inclined.
Oh boy, they call him an audible.
Yeah, I'm down.
All right.
I'm getting off the
So
boat.
Derek's
right.
going to pick out a random name out of who's watching us right now.
All right,
give me
just a minute, guys. Let me make sure I've got this set up right. So this will be our first time doing this.
Yeah. So while Derek is doing that, you know, guys, we want you guys to go to our website, blackcomiclords.net. Check out the website. We have lots of information on there. We have blogs, we have grails, we have keys, Black Comics. That database is growing day by day, and I promise you, you'll be blessed by it. Also, you can go there and get some merch. Tameko's wearing a dope shirt. Paul's drinking out of a dope cup. He has a hat on. I don't know if we can get the hat, but I think we have the hat there too. But, you know, check it out. Get you some gear. Represent the brand. Black Comic Lords is not an organization. It is a movement. Help this movable feast. So we
Seriously,
can bring
guys,
you more dope
like
content
it,
like this.
and let us know you like it by hitting the like.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
also subscribe. If you want to be entered in this drawing, you got to subscribe. You have until Derek finishes the sentence to hit the subscribe button to our YouTube page.
So number one, be sure to subscribe. Number two, you have to plug in #milestone into the chat. So go on and start doing that now. We'll see your entries come up, and after you get a few entries, we run the drawing.
Go ahead. If you want to be entered in the drawing, hit subscribe and put #milestone in the chat right now. If you want to be entered into this free giveaway for Milestone.
And also, guys, for those of you that are listening, if you have any ideas for shows that you want us to do, why don't you hit us up at our Gmail, blackcomiclords@gmail.com.
We have 2 entries so far. We have 5 entries.
So do that, and man, let's make some magic happen. Let's make some magic happen. I'm looking forward to next week's show. Blood Syndicate is going to be a blast. You ready, Derek?
Yep. I think we're just about ready. I'll give another. Let's do this. Since we're talking about the website, let's run the commercial one more time. Then after that, we'll do the giveaway.
So you got a couple more seconds, everyone. Type in Milestone, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want to be into the drawing for the free giveaway.
Quick commercial coming up.
Let's go.
Don't forget, go to blackcomiclords.net. Get you some merch. That beautiful shirt that Paul has on, you can get that. That sticker that Tameko just showed you, you can get that. You can get that on a shirt. You can get that on a mask. You can get that on a backpack. You can get that on a mug. You can get that on you can get that on anything. We got it for you. We got some heat for you. Go to our website, blackcomiclords.net, and check us out.
Let's go.
All right, here we are.
All
Hope
right,
everyone had the opportunity to type in hashtag milestone, subscribe to the YouTube channel to be entered into the drawing for a free copy of Icon by Mr. Mike Carson.
Paul, why don't you count us down?
All right. So in 5, 4, 3, 2, 2.5, 2 3/4, 1/4. I can't do math. 1. Let's go. The winner of the Milestone Comics giveaway by the Black Comic Lords is Mr. Gordon Mahan.
Gordon,
Congratulations,
regular on our
Gordon.
show.
You have won a free copy. What do you got there, Mike?
Cover B and cover C. I'll do 2. I'll do 1 of each. So I'll send him
2 books? I thought it was only 1. You're giving this guy 2?
I'll give him 1 of each. I got a couple of each one. So
Congratulations, Gordon. Thank you for participating in our first giveaway.
Just make sure you give your information to
just email blackcomiclords@gmail.com, Gordon, so we can forward that information to Mike so he can mail you your issues. Thank you very much. Congratulations, sir.
Thanks for joining for sure. So these two aside.
So Richard, you want to send out the benediction to us there, brother?
Well. So in closing, guys, we know that the work that we do and the comics that we cover and the things of that nature, we know how dope these books are. And we've just spent the last 2 hours telling you why Icon is one of the best runs that you should go out and buy and collect. So for that, you know what I'm saying, we can only say, you know, thanks, Dwayne. Thanks, Dennis. Thanks, all the crew at Milestone. Thank you for giving us joy as comic heads. You know, a lot of times there's nothing good to read or whatever. But and for me as an old head, I'll say this, that when I read this stuff like that, I'm sorry if I'm hard on y'all. I just need y'all to get on Dwayne McDuffie's level. so I can feel a little bit more better than what I spend my money on. That's all. But no, seriously, guys.
Shout out to Nicholas Ivey, though. He's doing some good work over there, so we gotta show him some love too for the new school.
We showing love to the whole Milestone. We want Milestone 2.0 to be everything, and then maybe who knows, in 10 years or 5 years or 5 minutes we'll talk about Milestone. But we do know that there's a static book coming online in September, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So y'all guys can look forward to that. If you're not reading Blood Syndicate, you're missing a treat. Blood Syndicate is the Blood Syndicate and Duo are the 2 Milestone books that are out now. Go get those. So don't tell us that you ain't got nothing to read. Don't tell us that we don't have original Black characters, because we do. But we're gonna go on and get out of here, man.
Let me say a couple things before we go, please.
Okay.
One, special shout out to Derek Harrison, who does not get enough of the accolades. He doesn't seek accolades. The man is mad humble. There have been a couple comments that have been made about, we're upping our production value. It's not us. It's Derek. I mean, the man is like just low key a genius, but I don't want to blow up his head any bigger than he is, because then he'll start flexing. And quite frankly, it's annoying. He does it to me on purpose. But shout out to that dude. Mad love, respect, Derek Harrison. Closing mark on Milestone Comics. Milestone is very, very important to me personally. I met Dennis Cowan when I was in college, and he did a lecture on Milestone Comics. I was already collecting it at the time, but it really just re-emphasized the importance of that run to me, and the importance of Black comics and Black characters in comics specifically. It's what started me on my journey. Richard mentioned something about, readership. And oftentimes he said, is there good books to read? And sometimes if you're frustrated with what is out on the stands today, it's okay to go read older stuff. And I understand that some of the stuff may be kind of priced out, But there's a Milestone compendium that's out. You can buy that for $50 and have like 200 pages of Milestone by itself. Don't let that be an excuse. Milestone set the benchmark for what we do here as Black comic fans. When we talk about having a new original characters, not legacy characters, and they're done by us, by Black creators, and they're done by a Black-owned company, and they're done from our perspective, and they're done to pay homage to the past, and also, done with a very fresh perspective, and from a perspective of respect for the genre and of these characters. That's Milestone. They set the bar. There are plenty of Black-owned comic book companies that are out today that, quite frankly, wouldn't be around if it had not been for Milestone. And any of those companies, I'm sure, would also say the same thing. But that's the bar. And hopefully that bar will someday be exceeded by one of these other companies.
That's what's up. That is what's up. So, it's your boy Rich. I'm here with my man Derek, making the magic happen. The queen, the moderator Tameko, the original Don Dada Paul, and my man Super Slabs himself, Mr. Mike Carson. We getting out of here, man. We love y'all. Peace, love, and nappiness. And buy the comics. Read the comics. Because if you don't, all we're going to do is drag you in the next live. Y'all take care.
I wish that was an exaggeration, but it's not. It's not.
All right, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night. We